Good evening. Good evening. This is Valerie McDowell, your writer, editor, author, book coach, and consultant. And I have the distinct pleasure and honor of introducing you all to six amazing women that I have had the honor and the pleasure of working with over these last 30 months. They are six of the 30 in 30 months that I have been able to help go from idea to published book in as little as 6 months, some of them in 3 months. And so I would like to bring them all to the stage so you can see them. And then we're going to talk to each one of them, going over their process, their journey, so that you can see what you can do to get your books published as well. So we're going to first bring up Linda Merritt. So Linda Merritt is the author. Well, all of I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you, but I'm going to bring them all up by name. So we've got Linda Merritt in the room. We've got Rhonda Copeland. We've got Sandra Thomas. We've got Jenny Davis. And it's like, who else we've got? And we've got Regine Celestine is in the house.
Hello.
So, ladies, welcome, welcome. And we've got one more coming. She's at an appointment, but I tell you, we get it all in. So, ladies, I want to welcome you here to our Author Showcase Summer Edition.
Thank you.
So I'm so excited to have you all here, that we are live streaming this on StreamYard, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever else it's going right now. But I'm excited to have you all here with me tonight. And I'm going to start with Linda. We've got all kinds of things going on today. We've got lots of schedules that we're trying to be aware of. Ladies, you know how it is, and all of you watching, that we are juggling multiple things all the time. But we get it done. We get it done. And so I want to bring Linda up. She's going to share who she is, what's been going on, all kinds of things. So first of all, Linda Merritt, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what's going on.
Hi, everyone. I want to say hi, hello, Queens. So my name is Linda Merritt. I'm born and raised in San Francisco. I'm the eighth of 9 children. And basically, I'm a clinical therapist. I've been doing social work for over 30 years in just about every population. About 10 years ago, I started doing some coaching with law enforcement in the hospital because they don't know how to engage those persons with mental health issues. And so found it very fascinating to see their perspective, and then build on it. And it was just very rewarding. But above everything that I am, an amazing daughter of God. And I've had so much trauma. And so I guess one of the first questions was, what was my experience? What was my experience writing the book?
Right.
So it
And
took
let
me
me just
5
jump
years.
in for 1 second. And I just want to shout out, like, did y'all hear those credentials? Okay, so we're working with some high level folks here.
Are
And
you
I'm
so funny?
like, how did I get so fancy in my life that I'm connected to you all, you know? So I didn't want that to just go past us, you know.
And it's likewise, Miss Valerie. It's likewise. We all have a testimony.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm just
We
grateful
bring
to
the
God
faith in
that
this,
you
that we're
have this
all on a
creative.
faith walk.
Yes,
So
but
I'm
I
gonna
just want to just acknowledge that I am definitely an amazing child of God. Sometimes I may not think it or conceive it, but I know that I am, and it's based on my testimony, and that's what prompted my book. Actually, the book that I was going to write first, it was my son Timothy. God's promise, because my son died when he was 18, and he was an amazing young man. So I wanted to write about his life. And my oldest son, Nehemiah, said I should write a book about my life. And so I said, really? He said, yeah, because everything else will make sense. So it took me 5 years of that, just the grieving process for Timothy, but in my childhood. And I realized that I had been talking to God since I basically was around 3 years old. So my book was birthed um, to basically demonstrate how long I've been talking to God. And because I couldn't talk to my mother, I couldn't talk to anybody because my my shame and my trauma was too deep. Being a clinical therapist, we come up with this terminology that a lot of participants talk about being an imposter. And I said, wow, therapists can also be an imposter too, because we have things that we don't want to disclose because we're supposed to be professional. But I felt like I was an imposter. If I want to promote and excel them, I need to share myself. I need to open up to promote some hope, because a lot of them have so many barriers, whether it be anxiety, whether it be depression, whether it be substance abuse or trauma. They had something. And I just say, what a wonderful thing to do for me to do, since I am an amazing daughter of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, is to write a book exposing myself, because it's not a secret. And I am a professional, and so I think it would be so empowering for them to see the other side of the therapist. That because I graduated from USC don't qualify me to be a therapist. Because I'm licensed don't qualify me to be a therapist. What qualify me to be a therapist is my trauma. And so
And can we stop 1 second with that one? So, like, that's a major statement. And I don't know, ladies, if anyone else wanted to chime in right quick. But you said what qualified you was not your credentials from USC, but your trauma. Anyone else have a comment about that?
Yes, I do, because Miss Valerie know my book, and it deals with several lawsuits.
okay.
And I'm also a professional. I'm a registered nurse. I don't
Yes.
want to get ahead of myself, but I understand what you are saying, because I had to struggle. I
Yes.
struggle with my faith, my nursing profession, in my training.
Yes.
So yes, that's exactly what qualified me. My loss, my trauma,
Yes.
which led to grief.
Yes.
Wonderful. And that's exactly the kind of comment I was looking for, because so many times we don't move forward in the things that we're called to do. We don't move forward in writing our books. We even get stuck in our own personal lives because
Yes.
of trauma. But I just want to salute you, and you, Sandra, as well, because you're saying you had to, you had to look at it. You have one lens of your professional hat you're wearing while you're dealing with this as a human being. And so these are the kinds of things that actually are the information that goes in your book, which she's showing her book. It's called Two Chairs, God, My Life, and Me. And why don't you give us a little information about that cover? Because I
Okay.
know we went through a lot getting that cover done for you.
So I actually I was speaking with one of my really good friends, and I was telling about all the ways, like journaling, doing my own therapy, meditating, studying, the ways that I feel that I actually am growing in my relationship with God, and how it was working. And she said, once you try putting two chairs together, one chair you can be in, and you pour out to God in the other empty chair. And then when you finish pouring out to God, go to the other chair and sit and let God pour into you. So I said, what? So so I went to bed, and I couldn't wait to get up the next morning. I ran and I put the two chairs in my living room. My son James came on, and he said, Mom, what's with the two chairs? I said, that's my sanctuary. Don't go in there. He got to call me. He has to call me literally to come over. And right now we're not doing so hot, but that's okay too. He loves me and I love him. And so, but the two chairs has been, it's more to it than just the two chairs, and then my son Nehemiah sent this to me for Mother's Day, and it say, be still and know that I'm God. Now, my son was not a God-fearing person and told me I couldn't pick religion for him because what if he didn't want to believe in God? So the two chairs, I asked him, how did you know I needed to hear to be still and know that I'm God? He said, because of your picture in your book. I said, what do you mean? He said, isn't that what you're doing? And I said, no, son. I said, my left hand is proper praise. My right hand, my left hand is proper praise up to God. My right hand, I'm holding Jesus' hand, and me holding my head down, I'm attempting to be in prostate position, and how you would actually go before God. And I said, but I really do know how. I need to learn how to be still. So this is amazing that you were saying.
And I just want to jump in because, even something as what maybe you might think is as simple as a cover, look at the impact that it's had on your son, you
Yes.
know, and then even just that two chairs. I think many of us may be familiar with that concept, but the way
Yes.
you explained it, because, and I think even for people of faith that in prayer, that we spend a lot of time talking, but not a lot of time receiving or listening.
Yes.
And so not only did you share about you poured out into one chair, but that you sat down in the other to get poured back into,
Yes.
and a lot of times we have to get, stuff out of us,
Yeah.
even as the book coach, as we write these books, it's a lot of stuff that's in us that we might not need in the book, but you have to
Yeah.
kind of get it out. And you guys know we do that process initially when we write that book. Let's just get it all out and then we'll keep what we need.
Right.
Okay. So that's excellent, Linda. So so what other opportunities have you participated in since publishing?
I think that because I do therapy, I kind of struggle with that, and I didn't want to do anything as of yet. I'm kind of was processing through that, but I do want to follow up with Barnes and Nobles and do a book signing with them, and I think right now, I think just doing the book, I was going through so much processing of exposing myself. And then, a lot of my participants brought the book and they gave me their feedback. And it was really amazing. It was well received. I was like, wow, but I just kind of wanted to be a little, I'm going to tell you the truth. Viola Davis came out with a book. Absolutely amazing.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely. I was like, oh my God.
And that speaks to being your authentic self in your book, sharing the trauma, sharing the things you went through
Yes.
as a child. She talked about abject poverty. I remember watching her interview as well as getting a copy of her book, and she shared all the dirt, all the
She really did. And when I looked at her, and Oprah said, "Well, so what? Why the book? Why now?" And she said, "Because I've been in therapy for so many years." I said, "Yay!" And then Oprah said, "Well, what about your faith? Where does that come in?" And she said, "That was my testimony. That's her testimony was her faith." And I mean, I just kind of want to cry when I even think of someone of that caliber, just exposing herself that way.
Mm-hmm.
And what God said, we have to come to Him naked. I don't know if a lot of us know what that really means.
Right. Exactly. So I just want to thank you. That has been amazing. And just for the record, Linda only put out her book a couple months ago, so it hasn't even been that long. So that's why she's still working some things out, because I think all of you can testify to the fact that just getting the book done is such just completing it. And I know Regine is our probably our newest one after that. So we just kind of finished with her recently too. And so, thank you, Linda, for sharing. And make sure the name of her book is Two Chairs, God, My Life and Me. Linda is in California. So we're going to be representing the US of A today from all with these ladies out here. So anything else you want to share about your experience writing the book? What would you say to someone who's looking to write their book? That they're stuck or they're scared, or what do you think about the whole process, even working with me?
Valerie, one of my mentors was Hilda Buer, and she wrote a book for you. So she actually
one of our 30.
She actually told me about you, and I've been knowing Hilda for over 20 years. And when we met, we both was going to be writing a book. So when Hilda wrote her book first, I said, wait a minute. I said, oh, she did it. So I called her and I said, well, I want to do my book. And so she gave me your information. And so my book actually was done when I called you, Valerie. But you helped me you helped me fine tune, redo. And so that
Just
part
part
was
of the
amazing.
process. Just part
Yes.
of the process.
Yeah, and it was a very amazing process, necessary and amazing. But it was like I think that it was um, what I'm going to do now is I just want to make sure I have ideas for another book. It's not so much as my trauma, but it's how trauma impacts our health, how it impacts our relationships, how it impacts our brain.
Right.
How it impacts so much of our self-esteem or lack of self-esteem, and especially as people, women of color, but specifically African American women.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for sharing that. And also to let you all know, you heard she's got another book. So sometimes you just have to get that first book out, and then all the other books that need to come will follow.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you, Linda. I know you have clients that you have to get
Yes.
to. So I want to thank you for coming in. And also,
I want to be able to view everybody, and I really apologize because, oh my God, I really want to I want to see everybody. I really want to see.
Well,
So
you're
am I
seeing
going to
them
be able
all.
to see?
It will be recorded.
Okay.
So you're going to get to see it.
Okay. Thank
but
you,
thank
ladies.
you.
God
Bye.
bless.
Good to meet you.
Let's give her a hand.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And also we have Rachel B. Foy who's in the house. So we want to say, woo, thank you for showing
Hi,
up.
Rachel.
In our early group of our 30 authors in 30 months. So I just want to thank you, Rachel, for coming in. I know you had some other stuff going on, so there's always stuff going on. All right. So up next is Miss Rhonda Copeland Lyle. So let's just add her to the list. We're gonna see what's going on with you, Miss Rhonda.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, all you beautiful queens, as Linda said. I actually wrote my book, and I have a copy. I go nowhere without my book. It's in my car. It's everywhere I go. But it's Warrior Mom, How I Fought to Get a Great Education and Scholarships for My Children and Others. $10 million won over the years. Wow. And it's interesting because I actually met Valerie, I think we've talked about this a few years before I actually wrote my book. We were at a conference together in Baltimore. I then moved from Northern Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia, to Panama to go with my daughter. She completed a study abroad program. And so while I was there, I thought, let me finish working on this book. So I actually had started the book years ago, but life got in the way, husband, children, and life got in the way. So I had not finished it. So started working on it while I was in Panama, and started working with an editor that someone referred me to, and things just weren't working out with that editor and I. And it was so interesting because Valerie, when I did reconnect with Valerie, she said, we talked about the fact that why would you select an editor who had not edited a book before or written a book before? And I thought, that makes perfect sense. It didn't work out and was a reason for it. So connected with Valerie, and things just took off because I turned over to her what was the messiest manuscript anybody could ever see. Okay. And one of my friends, actually, who is a college president, said that to me, who knows me very well, who over the years have been encouraging me to write this book because I have been working for so long and just have a passion for finding opportunities for young people, and not just for college age kids, for young people in elementary all the way through 60-year-olds who are trying to go to law school, finding opportunities and scholarships for them.
And let me just stop you right there. It's that whole part right there that you said real quick. Okay. So you started with your own children, 3 to 5 year olds. Okay.
Yes.
And probably you were already, they had probably already read hundreds of books with you when they were infants to toddlers, I'm sure.
Yes.
But the fact that, and I just want the audience to hear that Rhonda works from children, small children, all the way into 60s plus, however long or whatever you need. She helps you find those opportunities and resources that you need. This is her specialty. The 10 million one, that was some years ago. Who knows how much it is now? We got to do another. We got to put a new sticker on.
Well, it's 10 million and growing and counting. One of my former mentees that I worked with when she was in high school, she wanted to go to do a study abroad program, and I was a volunteer for study abroad through the State Department. And so I got her into a program where she went to Greece when she was 16 for a month, fully funded. My daughter, one of my daughters went to Spain when she was at 16, fully funded to Spain. My youngest daughter went to China, fully funded through State Department programs that people don't know about. My daughter got her very first scholarship when she was in 5th grade for a leadership program that was $2,000. And initially, when I applied for her to go, they said, oh, well, you and your husband make too much money. You know, you're going to have to pay the full price. Well, I sent them a copy of her resume, and she's had a resume since she was 5 years old. And that's the other thing I always tell parents about. Start your resume as soon as your child starts doing anything. Start document, because that's your documentation of what they're doing. And then when you have more than one, especially, it allows you to keep track of what everybody's doing. So I sent them a copy of her resume. She got $1,500. We only had to pay for a week-long program when she was, 10 years old. She then went to UCLA for a leadership program when she was 13. At UCLA, a 13-year-old on a plane going for, leadership program. She went to Vassar College when she was 14 to the Eleanor Roosevelt program. Also got my kids and several of my friends' children into private schools, fully funded. Now, they did go to boarding schools. Boarding schools not for everyone, but there were also day schools that some of my friends decided that they were interested in. So I have, over these years, I've just collected all of this information, and my friends have been saying, Rhonda, put it in a book, because I would go to churches, sorority programs, any type of community program, anybody who said we need to know more about what you're doing. And I would just speak to them about these programs. And I'm going to go back to the young lady I talked about that when she was 16, I helped her get a scholarship to go to Greece for a month. She contacted me after she graduated with her undergrad, and because she had gotten into Virginia Tech's a PhD program. She called me about 9 months ago and said, Ms. Lyle, I got money for the first year of my PhD program, but I don't know what I'm going to do afterwards. Do you have anything? Sent her some information. She and I talked for hours over the phone. She filled out this application. She got a fully funded PhD program worth almost $300K that will pay every dime. She now gets $3,000 a month for a stipend. So the money is out there. Folks just don't know about it. And my job is just to share this information with as many people as I can, which is why I wrote Warrior Mom. And I can tell you, ladies, I started out, as I said, my messy manuscript, but working with Valerie was just phenomenal, because she was bringing things out of me that I had actually forgotten about. And I can remember putting a lot of things in there. She said, well, you actually got another book in you. So we can't put everything in this one book. Let's just kind of narrow it down. And we worked on it. And I was just so proud with my final, project. And a lot of my friends were saying, well, it's about time, because they have been trying to encourage me to do this book. And so I've done it. I'm very happy with it. Just got it into Barnes and Noble. So I'm working with them to come up with a book signing. Matter of fact, I have an appointment with one of the managers at a location on Monday. So hopefully that book signing will happen pretty soon.
And let's just take a minute for a second, because that was just like a whole seminar in of itself, okay? And just shouting you out, like the lengths that you've gone to. I mean, $300,000 PhD program, really? Okay. So for all you out there in the audience who are listening, you've got kids, you've got adults, young adults, whatever. And let me just throw this in, because I know you, that part of what you did, the sacrifice you made, was to leave one federal job you had to switch to another one that was taking a lot of your time, so that you would have more time to get your kids to these programs. Why don't you talk about that for a second, and then we'll just go into what you're doing, next.
Right. Well, I had an absolutely awesome job that I absolutely love, working at the Pentagon. It allowed me to travel the world. Just absolutely loved the job. I was doing it before I got married and had children. And then, but I realized is that I could no longer do that job and do the things that I needed to do and be there for, for the kids and for the family. So I actually took a job that I knew that I was going to hate, and I did hate it, but it got me closer to where my daughter's school was, so that on my lunch break, I could go and volunteer at her schools. And one of the things that I always tell folks to do, anything that you think you may be interested in your children being involved in, volunteer for that organization. That's how I found out about these State Department funded scholarships. Found out about it. I volunteered for the organization, and I was a working mom with 3 kids and a husband. But when I could, I volunteered. So a lot of the things that the kids had opportunities for, I volunteered for with the A Better Chance program, which is a program that my kids and about 10 other kids that I worked with and sponsored, and my friends' kids, they all got into private schools through the Better Chance organization. And it's a national organization. But there's so much out there, and I always try to tell the parents. And one of the things in the mottos that I have in my book, and the quote is, never accept no from anyone who's not authorized to say yes. And what that means is, usually the first person that you approach about getting anything, whether it's scholarship money or whatever you may want, they're all authorized to tell you no. They're not authorized to tell you yes. So I always start, obviously, whoever the first person that answers the phone and says, oh, I don't know, we do that or we don't do that. And I just find out who, because by the time I ask the question, I already know it's something that they can do. It's just getting to the right person that can give you that yes. And I just worked hard at getting the yes. By the time I got to the yes person, 95% of the time I got what I was asking for, even though they would say, oh, well, you guys make too much money, your child doesn't qualify for this. Whip out my daughter's resume that she, as I said, she's had since she was 5 years old, and send them the resume, and they say, oh my goodness, she's done this. She speaks Mandarin. She's been to Cuba. She's been to Kazakhstan. Who does that? So, and I say document it. And what I always had, what I call a living document of all 3 of the kids. When I refer to three kids, my husband and I actually raised my sister's 2 children. So my daughter was 10 months, and then my niece came to live, her and her brother came to live with us. They were 6 and 9 into adulthood. So it was supposed to be 1 year, turned out to be forever, adulthood. And also I tell folks, don't leave out students with disabilities. My nephew, who came to live with me at 9, had a disability. I found a program for him that when he got out of high school, it allowed him to do a college-like program at George Mason University that's specifically for students who have intellectual disabilities. They're not able to do any college-level work, but the program works for them at their level, but it gives them that college experience. I then found he was got a job with an organization that places people with disabilities. And so he was working for them. And I told him, I said, well, Daryl's gotten into this program at George Mason. I said, but it's $22,000 a year. I don't know how we're going to pay for it. Guess what? She said, oh my goodness, we have a foundation. We'll pay for it.
And let's
$22,000 a year.
Okay, so she's gone from one level of, students getting scholarships and money to another level. So there really is no excuse. And if you guys were to see Rhonda in person, though she sounds like this big, giant, booming person, how tall are you? 5 feet?
I tell people I'm 5 feet.
Okay, she tells people, but she takes no for an answer. Okay, she takes no, and I'm just encouraged. It's like everybody I'm thinking about, like, okay, y'all need to talk to Rhonda. Y'all need to talk to Rhonda. There is money out there, and like you said, there's a lot of money that people don't know about, and a lot of people don't want you to know about.
And see, that's the other thing that I also found, because the kids were primarily in private schools. And so they were going to schools with people whose families were flying them in on their private helicopters or their private planes. Now, my niece went away to a boarding school. She wanted to go to a boarding school because a friend of mine had first told me she went to a boarding school like 40 years ago. And at that time, I wasn't married, didn't have any children. And she told me about the program A Better Chance. And I thought, if I ever have kids, I'm going to look into that. So I did. And one of my other friends, her daughter had done the program. And so my niece was always interested in whatever Helene was doing, she wanted to do. So she got full scholarship to go to her high school. She then went on to become the president of the school. President of the school. And it wasn't that many of people who looked like us at that school, but she got voted in by that school. Went on to, college, got scholarships. She went to South Africa on a scholarship. She went to Turkey on a scholarship. So the money is there. And I'm trying to just, first of all, get more folks to just follow up, because I must tell you, over the years, I've provided information to lots of students and families that just have never followed up, because it does take time and it does take dedication. But when you find these opportunities, you have to jump on them. You have to, because you can't just sit back and say, oh, well, my child needs a scholarship, but then they're not willing to write an essay. I've had people call me wanting me to write their children's essay for these scholarships. No, I don't do that. Your child has to write their own essay. It has to represent who they are. I said, you can't pay me enough money, nor would I accept any amount of money to write any essay for any child. You can help your children, you help them with an outline, but they have to do the writing of it. And one, the other thing is too, when your child has an essay, with my daughter went to China she was 15, to China for 6 weeks with the State Department to study Mandarin at a university there. And she had to do very extensive essays. Well, by the time she was ready to apply for college, what did she do? She went back to those same essays she'd already had, and she just refined them to, fit whatever the question was. So you don't have to start from scratch all the time. You can take something that you've already done and just modify it to fit whatever it is. So you can use that same essay, several times over, unless with some scholarships now, they're saying they want original essays. They don't want you to use anything that you used before. But if it doesn't tell you that, keep using it. I had one of my students went on to she just graduated from University of Pennsylvania. When she applied for colleges, she got $1.4 million in scholarship offers. Everything was paid for. Everything was paid for. So ladies, the money is out there. I don't care if you're 60 and want to go to law school, which a lady I worked with a couple of months ago, someone gave her my contact information. She called me. She says, I'm 60 years old. Are there any scholarships for me? I said, absolutely. She got into law school, gave her some, scholarship information, waiting to hear back from her to see which one she got, because I'm sure she got something. But this, as you can tell, this is a passion of mine.
And I was going to just say that. Yeah. Like, you can hear the passion in her voice. You can hear just the wealth of knowledge that she has. A 60-year-old going to law school on a scholarship. Nobody's even thinking they can get any money. They figure, well, I've worked, I've done this, I got to do it myself. No, you don't. And so I just want people who are watching, that you will reach out to Miss Rhonda Copeland-Lyle, because she is the scholarship strategist. She knows everything you need to know to get money for your little children all the way through your later life adventures that you want to do. And study abroad, boarding school, whatever it is, even if
day schools, private schools.
Yeah. So she can get that information. So what's next before we get to our next author here? So what's next for you, Rhonda?
Well, as I said, I have a couple interviews coming up that I'm doing. I finally got my very first paid speaking engagement. So, still working on that. But I really am excited to, get into Barnes & Noble. And also I wanted to tell anyone who purchases my book, which you can buy it on Barnes & Noble and also Amazon, I will do a 30-minute free consultation with you. Just provide proof that you have purchased my book.
And I just want to, on that note, so for any of our authors who are out here today, we'll let you put your information in the comments on Facebook or on StreamYard. We'll just make sure we get the information out when we post the video, so that they have opportunity to reach out to you, because you all have something to offer. You all have something to share, even if you just need to work with someone, like help them through that process. What was it like? Because you guys are all very inspirational. And I think our audience will just love to even connect with you on some level, even if just to follow all the wonderful things that you're doing. So I want to thank you, Rhonda, for just sharing your life, your adventure in publishing your book. We know there's more to come. We know your whole you're going to have all kinds of things happening. We know that's coming. So it's
Thank
just
you.
a matter of time. So thank you for joining us here tonight. And so
My
who we're
pleasure.
bringing up next, Regine Celestine, let's come on to the stage.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. And just tell us who you are, where you're from, and then we're going to let you have it.
All right, sure. I just wanted to make sure I have the fan over here. It's like Africa where I'm in the office. Where I'm at. I'm in New York, though, not in Africa, but it feels like Africa.
New York in the house.
Yeah, my name is Regine. So I am a first-time author. This is my first book. And really let's see, background. So I work in pharmaceuticals, medical device company. I work in compliance and regulatory. Ironically, I work in drugs, but I have not had the best of luck with the medical field. But yeah, so this book is about my journey with infertility and how I was able to, or I am able to triumph through it, through faith, and also just kind of discovering my purpose in life. And because what I find is that when you are going through infertility, it kind of consumes you, right? So as women from early on, young girls were taught, you have to be a mom. We play with our dolls, Barbies and all that. And, there's this unseen pressure that we put on ourselves as well as that society places on us. And when that doesn't happen and you have this plan, it doesn't really work out as planned, as you anticipated, there's this isolation, there's this shame, there's this grief, loneliness. And really the idea is that to kind of like remove the taboo from the idea of infertility. So, so basically it's like a disease like any other disease. People are not ashamed to discuss diabetes, they're not ashamed to discuss high blood pressure and so forth. But I feel like when it comes to infertility, there's like the shame involved, shame from, that you put on yourself as well as other people, the pity and so forth. And my experience has been, also kind of hiding it. And I was part of that shame thing too. When someone would ask me, do you have kids? I was married once, and infertility was one of the reasons for the divorce. During the marriage, I would get asked, well, did you guys have kids yet? Are you guys having kids? And I would always have like a witty comment, so being too embarrassed to say, well, I'm having difficulty conceiving. So really, I really want to remove that veil of shame and that taboo when it comes to this topic, and really just to bring awareness. And so far what I found in just writing this book has been huge liberation type of thing for me, because being able to talk about it and just with power and just kind of taking back my purpose and understanding my purpose is more than just my uterus, right? And that's the message, really, one of the messages I should say, because this book is not just really for women, and actually Black women in general, I feel like, are the least likely to discuss it. Since I have written this book, I've joined several support groups trying to really get an audience, because that's the people that are trying to looking for answers and trying to market the book and stuff like that. And I found that white women are like, although they have the similar feelings of shame and isolation, they're more open to discuss, right? Because there's this fictitious idea that Black women are fertile. From early on, they tell you there's this image that we're Black, so pregnant and barefoot and that we're promiscuous at a young age. So but it's not true. And just from my research, what I found out is that Black women suffer from infertility more than white women, believe it or not. And we're supposed to be the fertile people, right? And it's complete opposite, because we suffer more from fibroids, our diets, environment, stresses, and all of that. So really, I do hope that it is an inspiration. It's a tough topic, so the book is kind of light. I have a little sarcasm, some humor in there. Some of the comments that people have said to me, so my response is back. People are telling me, older folks telling me, well, put your legs this way, you get a girl. Put your legs that way, you get a boy. Church folks. Some people are very forward. So, I have some of that.
I want to jump in for a second, Regine, because I think that was part of you actually being able to move forward and getting your book done, that,
Yes.
even when we talked about it, and actually, I'm gonna go back 1 second. So the part when you were sharing, because I told you that this is a universal issue, and
Yes.
that, once you did your research and you found out how prevalent it was, and that it was even more so for
Yeah.
women, Black women, but also, the education of this issue to take it out of the realm of shame and everything, but also using humor, and not that you laughed it all away, but just that, like, you were able to be yourself. And,
Right.
if it was sarcasm that was going to get you through that, I mean, even when we did your chapters, I mean, one chapter is called Back Up the Money Truck,
Right.
because you talk about all the money it costs for all
Yes.
the IVF and all the drugs and all the different doctors, and how you thought, because let me just remember, like, if you went to Upper West Side or Upper East Side doctors, because they had all the fancy strollers there, then they must be working over on that side of town.
Yeah.
But but the thing is, you were desperate. You were trying anything.
Right. Yeah, I mean, definitely. And the book, actually, funny enough, I had an appointment recently with my gyno, just regular checkup. And I told him, he actually offered to share with his patients, but I was like, well, read it also, because I think it's important that the message is out there that infertility, that the cost when it comes to fertility is like astronomical, and it's unnecessary, really, right? So because insurance is just a child's play most of the time in this fertility game. The out-of-pocket costs, the co-pays, the IVF treatments, we're talking anywhere between $8,000 to $30,000, if sometimes even more. So one cycle could be $15,000, and most of the time insurance will cover one, and chances are of getting a successful, healthy pregnancy from one cycle is really, I think, 25%. So, this is something that affects, from my research anyway, 1 in 8 couples, right? So you would think insurance companies be more willing to, to assist in this type of issue, and I've also found that when it comes to, medical industry, they don't tend to dig deep enough. They don't really try to find the root cause. And this is one of the things that I'm hoping to come out of this is kind of like awareness to understand that this is a disease and you need the root cause, not just, managing symptoms. Okay, you have fibroids. Well, why do you have fibroids? Is it the diet? Is it stresses? You have long drawn out 1 month, 30-day periods. Why? Not just, you can't get pregnant. Well, why? Is it, don't IVF, IUI is not always the right first answer. Sometimes, and this is one of the things that's actually come out of this for me personally, is kind of like learning my body, understanding, symptoms, kind of curing myself from on a cellular level, understanding that sometimes fertility is a result of, like, perhaps a thyroid issue, which was in the case with myself. And, a thyroid issue sometimes is because of something else. Maybe you don't, hormone imbalance, so all of that is, so I try to kind of highlight all these things at a very high level. And, but the overall message really is, understanding, finding new purpose when you cannot conceive, okay, next, so just not to be stuck in that state of pity or, woe is me type of thing. Everything happens for a reason. And sometimes you kind of have to keep going and finding new purpose and kind of reinventing yourself. Right. So, but yeah, that's my spiel.
Well, thank you. I don't know if you ladies have any comments for her, but I mean, just the courage that it took to share your story. And so we just applaud you. I mean, I just think that I loved working with you. And just even all the things I learned, and I didn't know there were so many types of organic food.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have our own garden now.
Typing up stuff was like, what?
Yeah, I have out of this, I have my own garden. Learning everything, different kind of substituting from. I love to eat, so pasta. So rather than using regular flour, there's tiger nut flour, there's lentil flour, there's So I try to give, and some of those things can actually help people conceive. So I have some of that information in there, not just for people who are, have kind of hit a pause, but more people who still want to conceive. So a lot of diet tips, and some of that stuff, acupuncture, stuff like that. So I talk about all that, for people who are still trying to have a baby. So it's kind of to both audiences.
Exactly. So thank you, Regine. Her book is called No Baby, No
Yes,
Shame,
right here.
Life After Infertility. and another cover that we spent time on because she wanted not to put baby carriages and things on the cover, but to let you know that there's life. There's more stuff in your life than if you can or cannot have a baby. And so we
Yes.
just celebrate you for completing that because this book is for any woman, who's going through
Right.
that. But also, like I said, it's a great read also because of just your humor, because it's funny. There were parts where I'm like, wait, did you say that? So be yourself in your books. If nothing else, your books are your view, your perspective on what's going on in your life when you're writing these nonfiction books. So share who you are. That's what the audience resonates with. And so Regine did just that. So we just celebrate you. And we know that there's even more to come. So we're going to bring to the stage. So thank you again for sharing with us. So up next is Jenny Davis. All right, this powerhouse woman. I'm gonna let her just talk because tell us where you're from, and then I'll let you go.
Hi, good evening, ladies. Y'all are so wonderful. This is tough. This is wow. So yeah, I'm Jenny Davis. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I'm actually in Nashville right now, where I live. So I've worked primarily in the construction and facility management field for 20 plus years. And so not a lot of women in that field, especially not a lot of women of color. So yeah, so that's been where I've been
She's representing.
Yeah, for all Fortune 500 companies. So, but I got into writing. I actually wrote my first book. It was I want to say that was it was like 10, 15 years ago. It's a children's book. It's called Ben and the Butterfly. This book was inspirational to me. It came to me. I don't know why this idea came to me, but it came to me as it was as I was drifting to sleep in those waking moments where you're between sleep and awake and you're asking yourself questions. And I guess the question on my mind was, how do blind people identify colors? So this book is about Ben, a little boy who is blind, and he desperately wants to learn his colors, and he does. He does learn it with self-determination and the help of a magical friend, a talking butterfly. So yeah, so that's what the book is about. I also did another book.
And let me just stop 1 second before you get that, okay? Because this woman, all right, so she just eased that. So Ben and the Butterfly, okay, it's a beautifully illustrated book. I think, let me see, it's about 24 pages or so. But it's also is it the National Center for the Blind now?
Oh yes, so when I wrote the book, after it was done, I was like, okay, what is the vision? What is my vision for this? And what the vision was for me is to have a copy of this book in every school of the blind in the United States in Braille. So that's what I did. I went ahead and had it published in Braille, and then I mailed as many copies as I could. I think I missed 3 or 4 schools, but I got as many as I could in most of the major cities. So there's a copy of this book in Braille.
So just, there's due diligence that we do that, you don't know where your book needs to go, but just taking time to see who needs this book. It may not be the regular school library, daycare center, but there's plenty of people who need to understand this. And for all the parents of children who are blind, I mean, it's just a beautiful book. And I just loved working with you. And then I call her this powerhouse because this chick, okay, I'll have to pick up the next book we did together and turn it to the side so they could see. So Ben and the Butterfly was about 24 pages.
Right. Yeah. It's yeah.
Okay. So no spine.
No spine. So then I wrote this book, which is my first full-on novel. It's a horror thriller novel. This is called The Oaks on the Glen. It's about
she's not holding it up right.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, as an editor who had to read that book like 700 times, that's all I'm saying.
It was a lot, yeah. And but it's based on some true events that happened to me when I moved into an apartment complex down here, and just unexplainable stuff. And I started writing some of these things down, and it just turned into a novel. And
How many
just
pages?
there. It's I should know this by heart. I think it was 300 and 300
Oh
90
my.
something.
Oh
Some
wow.
ridiculous high number. Right.
327.
So this
327.
construction background stuff, whatever. This is a writer, an author, a novelist. Okay. She's already got multiple other things happening.
I
I'm gonna
do.
let her talk about that. But just a fun fact about me having to read this book as her editor is that I kept saying, look here, do I need to burn sage, pray, or oil before I read this next section? Because I'm like, stop scaring me with your book. It's horror. So it's not quite horror. It's suspense thriller,
Yes,
which I'm okay with. But I was kind of like, oh God, what's happening? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? So all right, shout out to Jenny Davis on the scary book.
right, right. I mean, and I've read it several times, and when I start reading it, I can't put it down. And I love to read, and I'm like, who wrote this? And so, and I will not stop. And there are parts in there that still scare me, stuff that really happened that scare me. And I'm like thinking to myself, why did I stay so long in this apartment? I should have left. But, and I talk about that too. Why do we do that? Why don't we follow our first fear? Why don't we say, look, this is not a good situation. I need to get out of it. Why do we try to convince ourselves that we can be comfortable in this? And it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's haunting you, but
It
just
could be a relationship.
Yeah, it could be a
Throw
relationship.
that
a
out there, or
friendship,
other things we stay in that we don't need to be.
jobs, family
Right, jobs.
members, something that we try to make comfortable when it's not really for us. So that was kind of where I had to, develop and think, okay, why did I write this, and what is the learning message from here? And that's what it was for me. So
And just quickly talk about how your launch went. When did you do your launch? When was your book published, and when did you do your launch?
So my launch, or the book was published last August. I did my launch in October of last year on Halloween. So it decorated the outside of my house because COVID was still, a big thing. So we did a virtual launch, and unfortunately, sometimes things happen, but the launch video didn't turn out that great. So I turned around and I did a Christmas special. So it was really cool. And we went over some things about the book, gave away some prizes, got some, merchandise and that kind of stuff. And, talked about some local folklore here of hauntings here, and just made it really entertaining. And it was a lot of fun. And this was what I found out just with working in Valerie, is in your circle of people, people that can help you. Like I have 2 or 3 friends that are photographers. I know a videographer. I know somebody who's been on the radio. The person that illustrated both of these books, I was fortunate enough to marry into a family of artists. So this was illustrated by my niece. And and she is phenomenal. So she designed my website. She's a wonderful, wonderful artist. And then just going on and on. I have a girlfriend who's a craft person, and she made things. And my sister, who's her degree is in communication, she was my co-host on one of my broadcasts. So it's just like, knowing who to pull from, getting your circle of people together and say, hey, let's do this together. So, and I'm hoping to build and grow on that. And I'm also working on a project with Miss Valerie, since we spent so much time together. She handpicked me to write a screenplay for her based on a poem that she wrote. And all I have to say about that is, Valerie, I should have known you 20 years ago, because
we all should have knew each other 20 years ago.
Poem is so powerful, and it talks about relationships and why we make the decisions we do in romantic relationships. And I'm just like, if I had known this.
And the thing about it is, you never know what the connection is going to do in your personal life. Like, I wrote this poem, and I probably had 80 pages or so, but I just couldn't finish it. And I was like, this woman here who likes to write just for fun, like thousands of words a minute, let me talk with her and see what we can come up with. So we finished the screenplay. And film was on my vision board. Like, I never saw this necessarily just as a book, but this poem, like, I saw it as a film. And so, there's some other things on there. So stay tuned. But what's next for you? Because that's done.
Yeah, that's
I gotta work
done.
out some other stuff with that. But what's next? Because I know there's been in the butterfly too.
Right. So I just finished Ben and the
You
Butterfly.
heard her.
Oh,
She
Ben,
just finished. We
uh,
just finished the 300-page screenplay. Okay, go ahead.
I finished it's called Ben Goes to the Farm, or Ben, yeah. So in this story he's going to go to a farm and interact with farm animals. And I'm working on a book of short stories that's going to be kind of in the same genre as The Oaks on the Glen. It's going to be kind of a thriller. I'm pulling from things that are happening today, world events, what we're seeing going on with politicians, road rage, Roe versus Wade, just the changing of our environment, our laws, and when I say environment, I mean it literally. So there's a story in there about how our environment is changing animals and the things that are around us. So I'm really excited about it. I got about 6 or 7 stories started, and 2 of them are finished. And
She's just a full-time writer. So we're just going to declare and decree that over your life, that we know that's the direction you're going.
I am receiving it because I if I could write full time, that would be my biggest joy in life.
Oh, that's not full time what you're doing?
No.
That's what I'm saying.
I wish. It seems like it. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we want to thank you, Miss Jenny Thomas in Nashville, Tennessee, for just gracing us with all of these wonderful books that you're working on and projects. And we know we're just going to be looking for the full-time author. You're going to be up there with James Patterson level stuff because it's just there. It's just there. And so thank you. Any information? I know it's booksbyjennydavis.com.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep,
Books by Jenny Davis. I know that one offhand. But any of your posts, any links that you guys have that you want to share, just send them to me. We'll get them posted so people know how to reach you and reach out to you. So coming up next, Sandra Thomas. Woohoo! And we got our last 2 are from Texas. So we got our Texas ladies in the house. So come on in, Miss Sandra Thomas.
Hello, everyone. Like Ms. Valerie said, my name is Sandra Thomas. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for over 4 decades. I'm also a certified relief therapist. And if you don't know what that is, just let me explain to you what it is. I believe the Bible is a foundation of my life. So I got training to be able to work through with people on the particular area that I'm going to talk about. And once you know what my book is about, this is it. I will live until I die, overcoming the sting of grief. I'm also a clinical aromatherapist, and I'm working on my mental health coaching, and I'm a grief coach. Okay, why did I write this book? My journey began, I would say, in I think it was 1990 or 1989 when my grandmother passed away. And God came to me in dreams about everything that was going to happen. In the book, there's 6 different stories that I cover. My grandmother, my mother, a 28-year-old son that I buried in 2010, my dad, my one and only sister, and my one and only niece. My sister passed away from pancreatic cancer 4 months after she was diagnosed. 10 months after that was my niece. In the book, there is a struggle. I'm a nurse. I have the medical training, but there's always been a disconnection from my medical training and my personal life. In the sense is I did hospice also, was a hospice nurse for 5 years. That disconnection came to reality when I lost my son. It was the beginning, it was kind of just the little steps. But at that time, I was so involved in worship that it was okay when I lost my mom, backtrack 4 months prior to my son. When I lost my dad a couple of years later, it began to affect me. When I lost my sister, my one and only sister, then it was the straw that broke the camel's back. And 10 months later, my niece. So there was a struggle with God, my faith. There was a huge struggle with my faith because the way I saw it is, okay, God, and I was real in the book, okay, God, since you are the healer, what happened to my sister? I've heard about you. Heal so many people. What happened to me? Why am I so different? Well, He doesn't owe us any explanation. But what he allowed me to go through in this journey was that a month before my sister passed, I was able to lead her to Christ. So she is healed. It wasn't according to my standards, it wasn't according to my prescription, but it was according to God. And because He is sovereign and He sees the bigger picture. And my niece shows, when you talked about infertility, that was one of the issues that she struggled with. And she was diagnosed, she had cancer. She did not want to go through any kind of traditional, conventional medicine. She went straight to holistic medicine. Now, being a healthcare provider, a woman of faith, I had to respect her wishes because she was an adult. And I don't know if any one of you have ever had anyone that have passed and you have to take a step back and allow them to go through it because that is your wishes. When I did hospice, it was okay. There was the disconnect. Now I wasn't doing hospice. It was real. In the book, I learned to confront my emotions because as a nurse, and especially I worked also in so many different areas of nursing. I worked in the emergency room, the ICU. Death passes before me all the time. So I never really had time to stop and debrief myself to then pick up and move forward. But when it happened to me on a personal level, that's when things changed. So the reason I wrote the book is it became a catharsis for myself and also to help survivors. Because the book is mainly about survivors. Yes, I have the stories, but it's about survivors. When I go through Facebook, I am appalled to see how many parents are still grieving the loss of a child. And I did not want to go through this route. I wanted to have a complete coaching in grief. And God stopped me. You know, God always had the last word. And He stopped me. And basically, He redirected me. And He said, "No, I want you to work with parents." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I don't want to do that. I do not want to do that because I have a living son. Well, I raised 5 boys, okay? Yes. And I have currently my youngest son who is struggling with the loss of his brother. So he's a survivor.
And let me
God
just jump
help
in
me.
for a second, Sandra.
Sure.
And one, I just want to thank you for just sharing your story and even to our audience to understand that, and even as you share your faith, that God's not afraid of our emotions, and that it's good for us to get them out. the book of Psalms, specifically with David, it's lots of him complaining and what's going on and God, where are you? And so it's important because a lot of times society wants us, okay, that happened, move on. And I think your book came out at such a critical time because, with COVID, particularly with people being locked in, it was so much and they couldn't say goodbye. They couldn't, formally let go the way that people were used to. So having to now, how do you do this? How do churches, funeral homes, how do you do this when people can't physically be there to say goodbye? And so this whole area, which is a part of life, grieving the loss of family members and friends, that your book speaks to these, and it really takes people on a journey because you were at very low places where you wanted to give up and you were done. Like it was too much. I mean, I was it six
Yes.
people, yeah, who passed away, like right one after another, in a short period of time for most of them. And so for you to be able to share that, and it took a minute because you went back through all of those emotions. And so even sharing that with the audience, that as you write your books, I tell people all the time that you are going to feel those emotions again. You're going to feel the pain, you're going to feel the joy, you're going to feel the anger, you're going to feel like when you actually authentically share your story, you go through that. And so I understand it may take a minute, and have it, take the time to feel it so that then you can get to the other side of it. Because we live in a society that teaches us to suppress things, or we may have grown up in families where your feelings or emotions. And so the fact that you were able to write this book and be able to to really allow people to travel this path with you, was very courageous of you, and I just thank you for that. And so where did that lead you in the process in terms of what happened after you finished the book?
Okay, once I finished the book, I did do a YouTube broadcasting with one of the nurses, and I spoke from a nursing perspective, and she interviewed me on my book. I gave away several of my book, and it so happens that once I wrote the book, it was like there were so many people who have lost family members. So instead of giving a business card, my book became
Yeah.
my business card, and I'm preparing to write a program, an online teaching program, and also to provide coaching. And I'm also preparing to be part of Mardell, which is a bookstore here in Texas, and I'm pretty sure it's all over. Yes, to start with a book signing. The next thing that I'm wanting to do is participate, be either facilitator or co-facilitator for grief share program that they have in the different churches. And that is a place of networking, and I can kind of come in as the observer, see where people are in their stage of grief. Where are they struggling? And those are the things that I have done so far.
Wonderful.
Very
Oh,
good.
just thank you again for sharing your journey, sharing just all the things that you've experienced in this grief process. And that many people, again, if when they don't have time for it, they get stuck, in that spirit of grief, or they linger and they're not able to move forward. So we just want to honor you. Sandra's book is called I Will Live Until I Die, Overcoming the Sting of Grief. It is available for your purchase. We'll put links down for you to be able to purchase it, or even if you have how people can contact you
Mhm.
to get you to speak about grief. So just thank you for sharing your story.
Thank
First
you.
author. And so finally coming up, we have Miss Rachel B. Foy. She was in the early part of these 30 months. And so I just want to honor this other Texan in here. And so Miss Rachel B. Foy, share with us what's going on. Where are you? Tell us.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, first, before I start talking about me, can I just say what an esteemed group of women there is here tonight? Like everything that you all have accomplished, being able to share your stories. I mean, we have $1 million over here with the scholarship. I will be getting with you, Rhonda. Um, I need some money to go back to school. And then we also have, is it Regine?
Yes, yes.
Regine, just sharing your story of infertility. I really connected with that because I have some friends that have encountered that in just the research and when you find out the statistics. So absolutely powerful. And then we have, is it Gina?
Jenny.
Jenny, the writer guru who's gonna speak her full-time writing into existence because that's phenomenal. I'm not like Jenny. It took me forever to get my book done. So you have a gift.
Yes,
And
indeed.
then last but not least, just you being able, tell me the last name.
Sandra Thomas. Sandra Thomas.
Sandra Thomas, just being able to share about grief. I myself having experienced that. So to have that many back to back, I can't imagine, but I know there's so many breakthroughs that people are receiving just from you sharing your story. And then last but not least, Coach Val, you for putting us all together and making our dreams come true. Kudos to you. So I'm Rachel B. Foy, author and life strategist, better known as America's Favorite Quitter. And like Coach Val said, I started with her. I think we published my book in 2019, like that December, maybe in 2019. And then we did the book launch actually in 2020. And it was right before everything was shut down. So I had to do a virtual book launch. We weren't able to do a lot of things in person. And we've talked about just the process. So similar to some of your stories, the process, I say Coach Val helped me to be disciplined. She held me to a timeline. And she really, I say she pulled out of me parts that I didn't necessarily want to share. Writing the book was therapy for me. Much of my story, I quit. My book is, just like y'all, I have my book. But my book is I Quit, the how-to guide to letting go of everything that's holding you back. And I Quit actually became a movement and a podcast before it ever became a book. And so when I came to Coach Val, it was not to write that book. I actually wanted to do a devotional. And I was telling her all about the devotional. I was super excited and had the plans. And basically, in a nutshell, she was like, that's a great idea, but I think, and so she was actually the one that said, I think we should do a book on I Quit. Like, that's what you're doing. That's what's resonating with people. And so I Quit was born. Much of I Quit is all about choice. And I didn't know it then, but I had a son as well. He would actually be 14 now. And my son passed at 3 months. And so after losing my son, when you talk about I had been in church all my life, everything about my foundation was shaken. And so during that process, what I learned is that I went through a deep depression, like everything you can think of probably happened throughout that time. But as my mom says, and I share in the book, like, it's okay to go there. It's okay to kick, to scream, to honor your emotions, but you can't stay there. And so part of I Quit was making the choice to choose joy, making the choice to live each day, making the choice that I wasn't just going to be a survivor, but that I wanted to thrive in this life. And so from the book, over the past few years, we now have extended to merchandise. The book was definitely a stepping stone and a leverage tool to a number of speaking engagements. So I do a lot of speaking, actually as part of my profession. My original profession, I started in corporate America, and then I left corporate America and went into education. I say I got the calling. You don't go for the money, you go because you've been called to educate kids. So I went to education. And I've actually spent the better part of 20 years in education, all facets, to even going around the United States and providing professional development for teachers. But what I found is with the book, so many of you have kind of touched on this, is understanding that the book is a tool and that it can align and connect in so many different ways with your life and even with your career. Mm-hmm. So for me, one of the things that came out of the book that I hadn't necessarily anticipated is a program where I actually go into school. So the principles that we teach within the book, whether it's accountability, leadership, empowerment, and a lot of, it's basically like, how do you deal with life? Like, how do you respond to life and not react to life? And many of us have the tools and we've been equipped, but we have a generation that necessarily doesn't have those tools. So that's a lot of what I do now going into the school district. I didn't get to do, like I said, the full-on tour and launch in 2020, but last year in 2021, we did a full book tour, the I Quit Coast to Coast with Rachel B. Ford, and we were in, I think, 15 cities that we went to, that we were able to go, and it was organizations, women's groups, organizations, book clubs, youth groups, conferences. And so there's just so much that has expanded from the book. We had collaborations, like different collaborations that I've also been able to do. And so what am I doing in the future? We're currently working on a workbook to go with I Quit with the book. We're also planning, we have an event this weekend. It's our first event. So I Quit has moved into the I Quit experience. And so we have an empowerment event this weekend for young girls. And then we'll actually be having a retreat for women. So that's in the process. And then I'm super excited that we are in negotiations and in talks for our first brand deal, actually with a brand for I Quit. So all I can tell you is I hadn't planned on writing this book. I was going to have a good old devotional. And Coach Val was like, no, there's something more. And that would be the greatest thing that I would want to leave with any of the authors listening is don't limit yourself. Like, quit limited beliefs, quit boxing yourself in, even if you need to quit toxic thinking and your own self-talk. Like, I'm not going to tell you that it isn't difficult and it isn't challenging, but I'm going to tell you that you can do it. Like, if you can finish a book, honey, there's nothing you can't accomplish. There's nothing you can't conquer. And so allow yourself the autonomy to know that there are such great opportunities that you never even imagined. And, you know, my book is not a chicken, chicken soup for the soul or chicken noodle soup. Yeah, it's not that. So I know I'm not making millions off my book. However, God has put all of us in a position where he can align opportunities. He can align resources that allow us to be able to bless people with the stories that we have. And that's always what Coach Val kept telling me. A particular chapter in the book I was struggling with. I was really struggling with, and it was the chapter about my son. And I tell this story. I said this another time we talked. I sent it to her. And the first time I sent it to her, and I was like, this is the chapter. And she was like, well, I think there's a little more. You know, I'm going to send this back to you. And I think there's a little more. So she sent it back this time too. So I'm looking over it. I add a little more meat. I'm like, okay, I can add a little more. And so I send it back to her. She calls me and she's like, I got the chapter. but I just feel like something's missing. And so I start bawling and I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to share and blah, blah, blah. And so she actually told me to take a break. She never gives you a break, but she said, take a break. So she told
Wait a minute.
yes, she was like, take a minute. So she told me to take a break. And she was like, I really just want you to reflect. And she was like, I really just want you to talk to God. And just remember that the book is not about you. It's about how you can impact people. Like, how are people going to resonate and benefit from your story? And so I took a step away, and it was like maybe a few days. And I remember I pulled out the computer and I was very angrily typing. And I'm just typing on the computer just like that. And tears are flowing. Like I never reread anything in that chapter. I just cried and typed. And I sent it and I was like, this is the final one. I am done. And she said, okay. And I have to tell you that that very chapter that was the most difficult to write is the one single chapter that majority of the people talk about, because it was just so raw and it was so honest. So the book makes you laugh. It makes you cry. It holds you to accountability, because I talk about sometimes just different things I had to quit and what I had to hold myself accountable for. And it's been a journey. And I say with I Quit, it's ever evolving. So as soon as there's one area that I have grown in, I feel like God doesn't necessarily elevate to a higher level as much as he makes me take a deeper depth. And so with every deeper depth, there's another piece that has to be peeled back. There's another layer that has to be healed. And so when I quit, it's just knowing that you have a choice. We can't choose what happens to us in life, but we can definitely choose how we respond to it. And so that's I Quit.
Well, thank you, Rachel B. Foy. And just as a little note for that particular chapter, after she sent me the angry text, through tears, when I read it, I was in tears. I knew it was done. I didn't have to call her back, But that's what happens, when you have a book coach. We know when something's missing. We know when the story is not complete, because if I don't feel it, no one else is going to feel it. And so that's the part about being honest and being authentic with the work that you do, because what you said, Rachel, is that it's not for us. Those scholarships are not for you, Rhonda. The grief counseling, we go through these things, and God allows us to come out better on the other side because of our response to what happened to us. And so as a result, we are now empowered to empower other people. And so bravo. And I forgot to wear my I Quit. I should have, put on my I Quit t-shirt, because I had to have a t-shirt. But look at all the multiple ways that your book can open doors for you. Merchandise, speaking engagements, 15 city tour. Come on now. So it's like, don't limit yourself. But I am just over the moon. Like, I never know what's going to happen when we do these, but I know these are phenomenal people, because you all have even elevated my own life. Like, just the wealth of information, resources, and knowledge of you phenomenal women in this room. I'm just blessed because of it. And so I just want to thank you all for joining me here tonight for Author Showcase Summer Edition Part 1. And we're about to quit this broadcast.
Can I add something? I just wanted to say, I forgot to tell everyone that my book is now in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. So I'm very excited about that.
The biggest library in the country. All right. Wow. So it's so many opportunities for you guys. And again, I will put information out about all these ladies, whatever links they want me to share with you, and keep writing. And if you have a book that you want to write, all right, here we go. Here's a link. You call coachvalerie.as.me and make an appointment, and we'll get your books done, because what are you waiting for? All right. It's time to tell your story. It is time to tell your story. So I want to thank everyone, and including Linda, who had to go. She's out there counseling a patient. And so thank you, ladies, for joining me for our Author Showcase Summer Edition. And until we meet again, all right, keep writing.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Night.